Hello and welcome back to the Digital Painter vidcast. My name is Terry Dana Chikimak II. I'm the Digital Painter and I don't have a green screen today. Alright, as you can see, you actually seen the back of my living room today, and that's because it is late at night, and I just did not have the motivation to put it up. I'm also in a garishly white t-shirt rather than another colored t-shirt. I have many colored t-shirts, but it's warm here in western Pennsylvania these past couple days, and my house doesn't have air conditioning, so it is the lightest t-shirts that I can find, and this is a very boring t-shirt, so I want to apologize right now for that I do not have something exciting across my chest, such as, I don't know, a Green Lantern symbol or a Thundercat symbol, which both of those would be really, really cool right now. Well, they'd be really warm, but they'd look cool. All right, we are continuing on our exploration of Procreate's menu tools. We are actually moving over to the right-hand side tonight, and we are playing a little bit with the brush tool right there. Now, I will apologize right now. The stylus that I have has been really kind of sticky because of the humidity in here. So I'm trying to make things go as smoothly as possible, but we'll see how things go. So let's go ahead and jump right in to the brush tool. We'll go ahead, hit it. It'll open up. It'll show us our brushes. Now, a couple things to note is that when you get Procreate, there's a bunch of different categories of brushes that you can get. Things like sketching, inking, painting, touch-ups, elements. You know, you go into elements, you see you've got like water. And if you put down, oh, water, it's black water, which is really creepy, I guess. I guess I could have made it blue, but who does that? Who makes blue water, right? All right. And a whole bunch of others. And then what you'll see on mine as we go through, is you'll see that I've got some of my own categories here that I've managed by either creating my own brushes or other people who create their own brushes then share their brushes. So I download them and I use them and they're pretty awesome. So I have a lot of variety right now in my brush palette. So we're not going to look too in depth into that right now, but we are going to look into what you can do with your brushes, how you can adjust them, how you can make your own. Now we're going to use some of the brushes that come with the program. And a quick note on that. So for example, I come into my HB pencil, you can hit the reset button and it will reset the brush to its original factory defaults, which is really nice. If you create your own brush, or download somebody else's, so I'll grab one of these and open it up, and you'll notice there is no reset button, okay? So if you were to adjust anything on that and you want to get back to where it was originally, you're going to have to re-download it, re-put it in. So that's kind of an annoyance there. I wish there was a way that you could reset it back to the original setting when it was downloaded, but, you know, not a huge deal, right? All right, so let's look at our HP pencil. Now you'll notice on the bottom we have lots of different menu items. We have stroke, shape, grain, dynamics, pencil, general, source. Some of these I'm more intimate with. Others I don't adjust that much, so I may not have as much insight as maybe somebody who comments on my post. So just be aware of that. So let's go ahead and actually we're going to switch. We're going to switch to something in the painting section. Round brush, we'll do that. Okay, so let's start with our stroke button on the bottom, and we'll start with our stroke plot. And you'll see spacing right now for this is 2.3%. If I bring it up, that's because each of these brushes are made with a stamp of some sort, okay? And the way you find out what the stamps are is in the bottom. If you go all the way to the right to the source, you'll see that there's a shape and there's a grain source. And you notice our shape source matches what's up there, and our grain source is actually blank. We could go in and change that. So let's change our grain source to something funky dunky, like fine spray. So you notice how that changed what we see up top in our image. Now I'm going to actually reset that. So we're back to it. So what we have then, and I'm going to open up my spacing so we can see it. What we have, our grain source is just, it's full, okay? So it fills the shape. So if we come out here now with our spacing and we move along, you'll see that it spreads like that. If we take it back down to the 2. Well, we'll get it close. 2.7 right there. Now it looks and feels like paint, okay? So that's the spacing. The other part of that, and I'm going to bring our spacing back up, is our jitter. And what our jitter does is it makes it go in funky directions as you pull. So now, if I pull across, notice how I'm pulling straight across, okay? So I've done nothing different than the first one. Oop, went too far. There we go. I'm just pulling straight across, but it jitters the location of them. Okay. Now, if we take our spacing down, back down into our 2-ish area, you'll see what the jitter does here. So we'll bring the jitter all the way up. This is up 94%. Okay. Versus the jitter down here at 0%. Okay. So it creates quite a different dynamic depending on what you're trying to accomplish, okay? So spacing and jitter. And then down here you have your stroke tapers, right? So if we come and we want to leave that fairly low. We'll leave that fairly low. There's okay. So what we've got here is we now have a taper at the beginning, okay? Now, if you have a pressure sensitive, you can actually mess with it via pressure sensitivity. We don't. Mine is all via how fast or slow you go. So you can see it starts at a point. Now, right now I have it on opacity and width. Okay, if we take down the size and it's just opacity, it starts less opaque and then goes in. And then we could take, you can adjust this however you want. Oops. There we go. Okay. So you can play with those. Again, I tend to not mess with those. You'll get different effects. A lot of that will depend on the source. So when you adjust the source, coming back in and playing with the stroke taper can actually be a lot of fun. So these are our strokes. Next up, we have our shape. Okay. So our shape behavior can scatter. Okay. Or not scatter. That's max scatter versus no scatter. And then it can also rotate. Now, one of the things we'll look at, let me take my spacing so it's a little farther apart so it's easier for us to see. So scattering, notice how it's rotating. Okay. So each time I lay it down, it'll rotate in a different direction. Okay. Now our rotation right now is static, but we can adjust it to the left or to the right if we wanted to. We're just going to leave it static. We can also randomize and azimuth it. I'm not going to use the azimuth much, but I do like to use the randomize. Again, you'll see it a little more prominent as you change the source. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and reset. I love the reset button on the factory ones. So we've got stroke, we've got shape, we've got grain. Okay, now grain is funky. I'm going to take our spacing back out. So grain movement, and I just realized our grain is just solid, so we're not going to see much change here. But depending on your grain, you can adjust its movement, its scale, so it changes as you go, its rotation. So if we were to come in here, we change our grain source to something like, I don't know, I want something textury. Something like, let's do brick. Okay, there we go. Come in here. And so you can see the grain moving in there. So the movement, you can change the scale of the grain. You can change the zoom. You can change the rotation. Okay, so all of that can affect the grain. If you're using a brush that doesn't have any grain, then it's less relevant. But those ones that do have grain, you can adjust the grain behavior. So again, we look at this shape source, grain source. You've got shape and you've got grain. Okay, so those menus will adjust those two areas. Next up, we have dynamics. And dynamics, how do I explain dynamics? There's a lot that goes into here. You've got your color mix, which is important, opacity variance, size variance. Let me come back to that in a second. Here under the pencil, you can, if you've got a pressure sensitive pencil or stylus, you can adjust your opacity or your size or your softness to be controlled by the pressure. And if it's one that can actually read tilt, you can actually adjust the opacity and size via the tilt. Coming back to dynamics. So let's look at, so there's flow, right? Flow is very similar to flow in Photoshop. Think of it about how much paint is coming out of your marker. And I just realized I was scrolled down and I wasn't even starting at the top. So fall off. So there's fall off. As you go, less paint's on there, right? Okay, so that's fall off. I'm going to take that back down to 0. You can dilute it, which you can see it's almost less opaque. I've actually diluted it a little too much. There we go. There we go. Okay. You can adjust the charge. So if our dilution, let me bring our dilution up and turn our charge on. And you can see how it's losing paint as we go. So let me clear this. So here again, I'm just going to start to go. See how we're losing paint? So that's the charge, okay? We start to lose paint as we go. I'm going to turn both of those off. This was actually had the glaze on. Notice how it disables dilution and charge. So the glaze, oops. I should probably reset this. There we go. I should use colors rather than black too. You can see, you can partially see through it. Okay, so if you look very, very closely, let me grab a black. Right here, you can see where they overlap. Here, okay. So that's what's happening with the glaze. If I turn the glaze off, you won't see that. Let me switch back to a color and turn myself big again. Okay, so you can't see where they're overlapping now. Okay, so a glaze is almost like watercolor, right? Come back in here. If we turn the glaze black on, you can adjust the flow. So if we turn the glaze down to, let's say, 55%, right? Let's clear again. And you can start to get build up. See how I'm building up there where we overlap? Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Let's see. Opacity variance. You can adjust the opacity variance based on your speed. You can adjust the jitter. We're not going to mess with that. And your size variance. So opacity and size, I just adjusted over here with my sliders. Okay, opacity and size. I don't need to adjust it via speed. It's not important to me. Okay, and what I mean by speed is how fast you move your brush can adjust how much opacity. So if we, again, let's clear this. And if I turn speed all the way up. So if I go really fast versus really slow. So really fast versus really slow. Okay, so that's the speed adjusting the opacity. You can also do it with the, so let's do it with the size variance, right? Clear. Very fast, very slow. Very fast, very slow. Okay, I'm like a hypnotist here. Your eyes are getting heavy. Okay, we're going to reset that. So part of the reason for allowing the speed to adjust things is because you don't have pressure sensitivity. If you want to, you can sit there and play with having the speed adjust, again, your thickness, thinness, that sort of thing, which is kind of nice, I guess, but I'm not a big fan of it. I just use my sliders on the side. I talked about the pencil. We have some general properties. You can orient to iPad, screen. You can use the stamp preview. Okay. There are size limits you can adjust. So if you look here, the size limits are max and 1%. But if we go to, say, the sketching pencil, our size limits are 6.3% and 2.1%. So this holds you to specific size limits. Same thing with the opacity limits, okay? So depending on what type of tool you're creating, are you creating a paintbrush or you're creating a watercolor brush? You know, a watercolor brush, you may not want opacity to be able to be max. You may want the opacity to go no higher than 50% because watercolors are usually translucent and you build them up over time. And then, of course, we get to the very end, which is where our source is. Okay, and so this is the pencil, in case you're curious, the shape, and this one does have a grain that you can play with. I'm resetting this, and I want to reset that paint one that I was using. And oh, note here that it says modified. If it's been modified, we're going to go ahead and reset it. And now it won't say modified. Okay, so if we come over here, I'm going to go, I think, very end. Does this have... This was just some brushes that I was playing with. Let me go ahead and clear this. That is actually a shape that I think I created, and then I found a grain source. Let me see this one. Again, another shape. A note on the shapes. You can rotate the shapes. 2 fingers. You can actually do it with the grain too. And if you double tap it, it'll actually reverse what you see and what you don't see. So this is actually more evident, I think, on this one. Let me see. Yeah, so the middle is left open. You can notice how the shape of the brush got kind of squarey up top there. And then if I tap it, now the middle of the brush is what is seen, okay? And a good way of doing this is if we actually go into the stroke, 5.4%, I have to remember that. I'll do this. And then if we go here, you'll see now it's the outside of the, so the white area versus now the white area. Okay, so I'm going to come back and switch this back down to 5.4 roughly. That'll work. And then I think this is another one that I created. Look at my source. Yeah, so sometimes I pull from the library. You notice when I click on this, it brings up, you can pull from iTunes, your photos, your Pro library, or import from. I like to just look at the Pro library. There's a lot of different things you can look at in here and pull from. Some really interesting shapes. But if you want to, you can just as easily import. And you can import these images from your iCloud drive. It's, you can click locations. There are more. And so there, pull it from Dropbox, Google Drive, etc. So you do, if you are going to create your own, you're going to want to save it into a square as seen here, and then kind of play with it. And you can see, like I said, I've got a lot of different peoples. So here are some shape ones. If you look at these, easy ones. If we go this way, there's some skin and hair ones. Where is it this one? Yeah, so this is scales. Looks really cool. Okay. All right. So you can see what you can do. A lot of different settings. What I would do is I'd encourage you to play with it. You can actually make your shape source in Procreate too. So if we wanted to come in here, and let's go back into the gallery. And we're going to create a new one. Now, obviously, to do a square, you're going to want to do a custom. So let's just do something simple like 400 by 400. and click create. And then we come in here. Now remember to use black and white. So I'm going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a brush. Now this is the quick down and dirty. I am doing this uber fast, right? So I'm going to come in here. Ooh, that is really big. So I'm going to undo that. I'll bring this down a little bit. Okay, so we have a 400 by 400. I'm going to go in and we're going to go ahead and share it as a JPEG. And we need to put it somewhere, right? So I'm going to just save it as an image. All right, so a little bit of a glitch there, but I'm back. All right, so now it's time to make our actual brush. We created it, right? So we've gone into My Set. We're going to hit the New Brush setting. We need to select our shape. And we're going to pull it from our photos where we saved it to. We click All Photos. There it is. We click it. And then we need to select a grain, and we're just going to go with the blank square grain. Once I find it, I know it's down here. There it is. I'm going to click that. Okay. So one of the things you'll notice is that the center is black, the outside is white. That means it's actually taking the white area. So we're going to, there. Now we're taking the actual shape in the middle. And then we can come over here and we can kind of play with different things like the jitter, the shape. You know, if you want to make this, there's a little bit of a scatter, a little bit of a rotation. Go into dynamics and let's make this glazed. And put the flow like to there. And what we're going to do is we're going to change our color to a nice, and that's a good color. And we have created our own brush. Okay, now obviously I'd take this down a little bit. And again, right now I have it on glaze, so it's acting kind of like watercolor. Now if you go over the same spot enough times, it will eventually get to the base color. Okay. You can also use that brush, if you wanted to, in the other tools. And we're going to look at these other tools next week. We're going to look at the smudge and eraser next week. They work very similar to the paintbrush. We come in here, though. Oops, I forgot it's really big when it started. There we go. We're just smudging with that shape. Okay. All right, that's going to be it for this week. A couple things I want to note. Make sure you stop by the website, www.thedigitalpainter.com. Say hi to me. Send me an email at terry.jakimiak@thedigitalpainter.com. I answer the emails within a couple days. It's... when you work a full-time job as well as try and do this, you can go a little crazy. So I try to do it as best as I can. And I want to thank you for checking out the videos. If you're new to my videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're not, and you're just enjoying them, fabulous. As always, I do these things out of my love for the art, but I do appreciate any and all support. So definitely stop by my Patreon page, which is patreon.com/thedigitalpainter. And that's it for this week. Thank you guys for all of your support, and definitely keep on drawing. Take care.